I'm Ryan, a 23-year-old living outside of Portland, Oregon. I'm not a city slicker, but I'm close enough to feel the energy when I need it. I work as an electrician, so I'm not one of those guys that wings it with a wrench and hope. I really completed the program, received my certification, and secured a position with a tiny local company. We're hardly a corporate powerhouse, but we have consistent work coming in. On most days, I do 2 or 3 service calls, just enough to keep the lights on at home, save a little money, and hold on to my ambition of one day opening my own business. What about that particular morning? Nothing extraordinary. I had 2 jobs lined up. The first trip was an office building with a dead wall outlet, which was very simple. Then dispatch notified me about a second call. A woman just outside the city needed someone to check the lights in her garage, which had been flickering on and off without notice. It wasn't urgent, but she wanted it done that day. I entered the address into my GPS and hit the road. The neighborhood was hidden away from the main strip with calm streets, large houses, and immaculately maintained lawns. When I pulled up, I slowed down for a second to take it all in. The house was a sleek, modern 2-story with a large driveway and a black gate that opened as if it was anticipating me. It appeared to be an expensive home, which is not the type of place I typically receive calls for. I parked, got my belongings, and headed up the driveway to the garage entrance. As I came closer, the side door opened. A tall woman, possibly in her late 20s or early 30s, stepped out, her dark hair wrapped back in a loose ponytail. She wore jeans and a fitting top, nothing spectacular, but it suited her. Still, it wasn't simply her appearance. It was the way she moved, confident, graceful. She gave me a short peek and barely looked up from her phone. "Are you here for the garage lights?" she asked, simply and directly. "Yes," I said. "Ryan, from Cascade Electric." "You indicated that they have been behaving up." She nodded and motioned toward the garage. "They cut out whenever I open the door. They sometimes kick back, sometimes not. It is bothersome." "Okay, I'll have a look." She did not say anything after that, just turned around and returned through the inside entrance leading into the house. I put down my toolbox and began to work. It did not take long to figure out the problem. The wiring on the motion sensor was ancient and shoddy. It appeared that whoever installed it did not care about doing it correctly. I turned off the breaker, removed the broken unit, cleaned up the mess, and installed a proper sensor with new casing. Overall, it took me around 2 hours, possibly a bit longer with testing. The entire time, no word from her. No chit-chat, no check-ins, just silence. When I was finished, I packed up my tools, turned the breaker back on, and ran a few more tests. The lights functioned flawlessly. I knocked on the door and waited. A few seconds later, she emerged, this time without the phone. She stepped up, looked at the lights as they turned on, and gave me the slightest smile. "So, finally," she said, "they genuinely work." "Yes," I nodded. It turned out to be a wiring issue. I also replaced the sensor for safety reasons. "You should be okay now." She crossed her arms and tilted her head, looking at me for a second. "You are good at this. Thank you." I was honestly pleased to hear it. Then came the curveball. "You know," she said, "you are pretty handsome." This caught me off surprise. I blinked and gave out a small, hesitant laugh. Thank you." Her smile softened. This time it felt genuine, not as a joke or tease, but as if she meant it. Then she leaned nonchalantly against the doorframe. "So, Ryan, what do you do when you aren't mending stuff?" This question astonished me even more. Yes, I've had friendly clients before, but nothing like this. "Honestly," I said, "not a lot. Work keeps me busy. I'm a peaceful evenings kind of guy. I don't get out much." She nodded, as if that made sense to her. "That is refreshing." "I'm not." huge on socializing either, and that really threw me off. She didn't resemble someone who spent her weekends on the couch. She looked like she belonged in VIP clubs or on the deck of a private yacht, but the way she said it seemed genuine. She moved on. People make assumptions based on a specific look. It becomes old quickly. I nodded slowly, unsure how to answer. Then she said something that really confused me. I realized this is an odd question, but would you like to hang out this weekend? I froze for a brief moment. Hang out? I asked. She grinned again, this time with a more mischievous expression. Yeah, you and I somewhere pleasant, somewhere calm. You do not have to respond immediately away. I pondered for a moment before nodding. I'd enjoy that. Her smile spread just slightly wider. Cool, I will SMS you the specifics. I appreciate you fixing the lights. She said that, then turned and went back inside. It was as if she had flipped a switch and fled into another universe, leaving me standing there, partly bewildered. I got into my car, closed the door, and sat in silence for a minute. What the hell happened? The remainder of the day felt as if I were floating through it. Everything around me seemed to be moving slowly, and I wasn't a part of it. I got to my second job, repaired a blown outlet in some guy's workshop, made polite, small conversation, and kept checking my phone every 15 minutes, like some guy waiting for a life-changing call. But nothing. No missed calls, no texts, not even a thank you again, just silence. I didn't even know her name. I completed the entire task in a neat and professional manner, asking no personal questions. Then, just in the end, she dropped the question like a bomb. You want to hang out this weekend? So I said yes, just like that. By Friday, I had yet to hear a word. I started to worry if she hadn't meant it. Perhaps it was a nice throwaway line, or worse. Some wealthy person's little dare she would subsequently laugh about it with her pals. You won't believe it, but I asked my electrician out. I attempted to dismiss it, urging myself not to overthink it. People say strange things all the time. But then, shortly after noon on Friday, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Hello, I'm Angela from the lights. Still up for Saturday? I will pick you up noon. Drop a pin. My stomach did a complete somersault. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I let it go. Angela, so that was her name, and she had not forgotten. I didn't think too much about it. I just texted her the location of a public parking spot near a hardware store not my home, but not distant. Middle ground. She responded with a simple thumbs up. That morning, I was much more prepared than I should have been. I tried on 3 different shirts, and they were all basically the same. I cleaned up my boots, even shaved, something I seldom do on weekends, but for some reason, I felt compelled to present myself in a more polished manner. I arrived at the lot around 11:45 and sat on the curb, pretending to go through my phone, while casually observing every car that pulled in, like a guy waiting for a blind date he couldn't imagine. At 12 o'clock, I heard a deep growl from something swift and costly. I looked up. She arrived in a silver Porsche 911 Turbo, top down, sunglasses on. Her hair caught the breeze like a scene from a film. Everyone in that lot turned to look at her, and then at me, as if I were the delivery boy who had been let inside the penthouse. She waved nonchalantly, "Ryan." I gave a modest nod before opening the passenger door. "That is me." She gave a grin. "Jump in." The seats felt like butter-smooth quality leather that you only see in car commercials. She smelled like fresh citrus and something high-end that I couldn't identify. As we approached the highway, I finally inquired, "So, where exactly are we going?" "I go to this place when I need to get some fresh air," she said. "I think you'll enjoy it, I promise." We drove for around 40 minutes, weaving over hills and lush woodland before moving on to tighter back roads. She eventually went onto a gravel path that curled into a wooded area. I began to hear the sound of water before seeing anything. She parked the car, and we walked a short trail, perhaps 5 minutes, before the trees opened up around us. A little waterfall cascaded into a clean, calm pool, flanked by towering rocks and trees that appeared to scrape the sky. It was breathtaking, peaceful, strong in a gentle way. I looked over at her. She wasn't really smiling, but her face was soft and calm, as if she had finally breathed. She responded calmly, "This place makes me feel small, but in a good way." We sat on a big, flat rock, little way away from the water spray. She removed her sandals and submerged her feet in the water. I did the same. It was incredibly cold, yet it jolted me awake in the greatest way. "Still looking forward," she added. "I bet I know what you're thinking. Do you?" I inquired curiously. "Yeah, you're wondering why I'd asked someone like you to come out here." I remained quiet. She was not mistaken. She focused her attention on the ripples in the water. "My father operates a big logistics company. My mom, she is in charge of human resources there. Our house was completely paid off before I reached double digits. Private schools, flashy cars, all the cliches." I did not interrupt. She continued going. "The thing is, everyone has always viewed me as a label. The wealthy, sophisticated young lady. Guys enjoyed the concept of me. Girls either aspired to be like me or despised me." She hesitated and added quietly, "I never felt like anyone noticed." "Me, not really, until I met someone who didn't even know my surname." "Do you mean me?" I asked cautiously. She nodded once. "You did not inquire about my background? You didn't try to flirt or brag? You just finished the work." I said thank you. Left. That's unusual. That left me speechless, so I uttered the most honest thing I could think of. "I assumed you were playing a joke on me. I'm just fooling around." She eventually shifted her gaze toward me. "I understand that," she said quietly, but I was not. The stillness that ensued was not unpleasant. It felt purposeful, as if we were both thinking carefully. Then she offered me a tiny smile. "I'm not asking for anything heavy. I just wanted to speak with someone who doesn't want anything from me." "You've got it," I said. "There are no strings." She nodded. "Thanks." We ended up sitting there for more than an hour, talking, laughing, and telling silly stories. It was the most tranquil I'd felt in a long time. I felt as if something inside me had finally exhaled. As the sun began to set behind the trees, she stood and brushed the grit off her jeans. "It's time to head back," she said. "Yes," I responded. "But I'm so grateful you brought me here." The ride back was silent, but in the greatest manner. There was no music or awkwardness, only the sound of the wind and the road humming beneath us. She left me off at the same parking area where she had picked me up. I reached for the door, paused, and looked back at her. "Do you suppose I will see you again?" She did not respond right away. She smirked as she stated this. "Maybe you should call me." I stepped out, softly closed the door, and stayed there, watching her drive away until her taillights disappeared into the horizon. And then it struck me. Whatever it had been, it wasn't just a casual gathering. It had not been a date either. Not precisely, but there was something. Maybe this is the beginning. I just didn't know what. The days that followed felt different. I was still working on outlets, changing outdated panels, and resetting trip breakers, but the routine had changed. Angela had carved out a spot in my thoughts, not in a loud, overwhelming fashion, but rather as a subtle tune that continued to play in the background. She remained on my mind, constant and steady, always there. But what surprised me was the silence. No texts, no calls, not even a short thank you again. It wasn't like I expected her to blow up my phone or anything. But given how genuine she had been beside the waterfall, I figured there might be something. Hey, I had a good time, a ridiculous meme, anything. But the quiet persisted, and with it came doubt. Perhaps she just wanted to chat to someone that day. Perhaps I was only a one-time sounding board, a guy from another universe who was simple to converse to. Maybe it was the entire intent. But something inside me refused to let it go. Maybe it was the way she stared at me right before I got out of her car, or as she remarked, "Maybe if you call me," as if she was handing me the ball and stepping off the court. I called her. It was the following Friday. I was sitting in my car, outside a hardware store, sipping bad coffee and pretending I wasn't nervous. I took out my phone, located her name, and tapped it. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello," she said. Her voice sounded warm and relaxed, as if no time had gone at all. "Hello, I'm Ryan." "I know," she continued, her voice bright with a smile. "I hoped you would call." I let out a slow breath that I hadn't realized I had been holding. "Do you want to meet again?" I asked. "This time, I'm going to plan something." She thought for a bit before saying, "I would like that." We chose Sunday afternoon. I promised her I would come fetch her this time. She didn't inquire what we were doing. She simply said, "Okay, I will be ready." I had no idea what Angela might expect from a second meeting, but I knew what I wanted it to be: honest, basic, and meaningful. So I arranged a picnic. Yes, a genuine one. I took an old blanket from my mother, cooked some sandwiches, packed some fruit, and included a couple of glass bottles of lemonade. I even purchased a little cooler specifically for the occasion. Then I went online and rented a car that was neither flashy nor junky, but rather clean and robust, a silver 2018 Camry. When Sunday arrived, I drove up to her apartment, that same large house with its wide driveway and elegant modern windows. She was already waiting outside on the steps, dressed in a soft blue sweater and black leggings. No makeup, no sunglasses, no Porsche in sight. She approached with a casual smile and climbed into the passenger seat. "Hello, picnic boy," I laughed. "Prepare for a surprise." "Always," she said. We went approximately 30 minutes out of town to an open field, near the border of an ancient oak woodland where my father used to take me as a child. There was a clear view of the hills. The sky was vast and infinite above us, and there was that rare type of silence that reminded you how raucous life can be. We parked beneath the shelter of a few huge trees, moved everything outside, and spread the blanket on the grass. I poured the lemonade into 2 plastic cups while she sat cross-legged and watched the clouds pass by. "I can't recall the last time I did something like this," she admitted. "What? A picnic?" "No," she replied, smiling slightly. "Something that was not curated, staged, or intended for social media. This feels real." We stayed there for a while, eating, laughing about how bad I was at peeling oranges, and telling odd anecdotes about our childhood, weird clients, and favorite music. There was no attempt, there is no pressure. She was not trying to impress me, and I was not attempting to win her over. We were simply present. Then there was a silent time. She was peering into the trees, the sunshine falling just right on her face. She made a leisurely and thoughtful turn to face me. "You know what I liked best about the other day?" "What is that?" I asked. "You didn't look at me as if you wanted anything, not money, not paying attention, not even validation. You simply stared at me. I felt my throat tightening. Didn't know what to say then." She leaned forward just slightly. I met her midway. The kiss was soft, unrushed. There was nothing dramatic, simply real. The kiss felt like a hushed accord. We seemed to have arrived to the same conclusion without saying anything. When we finally backed away, she smiled sweetly and said, "I was hoping you'd do that." I was unsure if I had it in me, I admitted. "You're kind of intimidating." She laughed. "I understand. That is the point. Keeps the wrong folks away." We sat out there for another hour, resting on the blanket and letting the wind stir the trees above us. As the sky turned gold, she stretched over and grabbed my hand. She added quietly, "I'm not sure what this is, but I prefer it." I informed her, "Same here." The ride home was fairly quiet, but not in an awkward sense, more like we were both still holding on to the tranquility of the moment. When we arrived at her house, she didn't make me stop at the gate this time. We pulled all the way up to the front door. Before leaving, she turned to me. "Text me," she said, "anytime." And just like that, she was gone. I waited for a second. Longer, taking in the faint aroma of lemon and lavender that was still drifting in the air. I had no idea how this relationship would develop, but I was confident it wasn't a fluke. It meant something now. The next days were light-hearted. Nothing significant had changed, but it was like waking up with no weight on your chest. Work did not feel like a chore anymore. The journey between calls seemed like progress rather than a waste of time. I started messaging Angela more. Not really fancy, just a few honest and goofy moments. I just fixed the ceiling fan one-handed, holding a flashlight in my teeth. Not bragging, just saying local hero status is confirmed. Her coffee spilled over a silk shirt during a Zoom meeting of 12 people. Above that, we shared laughter. Sent each other songs and images of clouds that resembled objects, like children discussing secrets on their phone displays. We felt like we were creating something real without hurrying to label it. However, a part of me was still unsure where. I stood, she was wealthy, beautiful, and self-assured. I was merely a blue-collar worker with calloused hands and steel-toed boots. The idea that she would pick me over anyone else in her life seemed nearly unbelievable. Then, 1 week after the picnic, she texted me late at night on a Thursday. "Angela, are you free next night?" I'm technically always free, emotionally mysterious, and professionally underpaid. "What up, Angela? Come over. My parents are out of town for a week. I want to show you something." That was the first time she had invited me inside. Really? Not the garage, not the front steps, but the genuine her. I hesitated for half a second before responding. "Me? I'll be there." Friday evening, I arrived wearing my customary jeans and the cleanest black button-up I owned. The sun was low in the sky, leaving a lovely golden line across her driveway. The entrance door was already opened. She stood in the entryway, barefoot, dressed in an enormous knit sweater and leggings. Her hair twisted into a messy bun and no makeup. She seemed calm. "Hey," she murmured with a tiny smile before stepping aside. "Come inside." I entered into the foyer and took a quick look around. The interior was spectacular, with high ceilings, large glass walls, and a modern design. However, it did not feel sterile or chilly like a showroom. It had a lived-in quality warm hers. She led me into the house, into the kitchen. 2 dishes had already been laid out on the island. Candlelight flared between them. "Did you cook?" I inquired, lifting an eyebrow. "Sort of," she grinned. "I ordered from a favorite restaurant and reheated it, so semi-domestic." We ate outside, on the terrace under soothing hanging lights. The air had the chilly taste of darkness creeping in. She handed me a hoodie and said it used to belong to an ex. I didn't ask any questions. We talked just like we did during the picnic, she informed me about her job, which is marketing for a business aiming to rebrand environmental packaging. I told her about my plan to start a modest repair business that would also train young men who, like me, did not want to attend college. She stood up and said, "Come on, I want to show you something." She brought me upstairs, along the hall, and into a room at the end. When she pulled the door open, I came to a complete halt. It was an art studio. Canvases leaned against every wall. Some are half-finished, others are covered, and a few burst with color and real emotion. "Do you paint?" I inquired, genuinely shocked. She nodded. "This is not for anyone else. This is just for me." I strolled slowly, taking in the layers and brushstrokes. She stood behind me and said softly, "This is the only place where I feel like myself. No makeup, there is no pressure, no one is expecting anything." I turned to face her. "You should feel that way all the time." She met my gaze, and for a brief time, I noticed a break in the polished armor she normally wore. She moved a little closer. "I'm not sure what is going on between us, Ryan," she replied, just above a whisper. "But when I'm with you, I don't pretend, and this means something to me." I nodded slowly. "I have no idea what it is, but I am constantly thinking about you." We stood there, surrounded by her paintings and everything she hadn't expressed out until now. Her truth was all across the walls, and for the first time, I felt a part of it. I kissed her again, but this time, something felt different. There was no ambiguity between us, no awkward pauses or hesitations, just something clear, mutual, as if we had finally given ourselves permission to lean in and trust it. Later that night, we ended ourselves on her sofa, legs entwined, an old movie playing in the background, and none of us paying attention. She rested her head on my shoulder and spoke softly. "You are the first person I have let in like this in a long time." I glanced down at her and said, "I am not going anywhere." She offered me a faint, almost sorrowful grin. "Do not say that unless you mean it." "I do," I told her, and I meant every word. We both eventually fell asleep on the couch. I awoke about 2 a.m. to the soothing sound of rain tapping against the windows. She was still there, sound asleep, her hand lying on my chest as if it belonged there. I did not want to move. I didn't want to break that moment. I had no idea what tomorrow would bring, whether the gap between our lives would be too large, whether her universe will someday absorb mine completely. But I knew this. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like just the man who came to fix the wiring. I had a sense of being seen. It's been roughly 4 months since I initially knocked on Angela's garage door. I remember how she barely looked at me when she let me in. Her voice was clipped and informal, and she pointed to the broken lights as if I were simply another line on a maintenance order. And I was. For a few hours, that was all I had to be. But somewhere between the twisted connections and the burnout sensors, something else ignited. We continued to visit each other following that night at her residence. We didn't do it every day. We both had lives, jobs, and routines. But it became consistent enough. More? Beyond that, natural Sunday evenings gradually transitioned into complete weekends. Text messages turned into late-night phone calls, and those early silences, which were initially awkward, evolved into a type of quiet that was pleasant. There was no spectacular moment where one of us delivered a speech or posed a question. No, so what do we talk? It just unfolded in pieces. Maybe that's why it felt so real. But reality is never simply one layer, and I quickly realized that being with someone like Angela has its own set of challenges. It started little, with how people looked at us. You know the kind, when you walk into a restaurant and everyone recognizes her. Not because she's renowned, but because she belongs to that group. Those folks look at you as if you entered the wrong room and sat at the VIP table by accident. One night, we attended her friend's engagement party. Everyone was dressed in cocktail dresses and fitting suits, sipping elegant beverages and discussing terms like equity shares and launch prices. I stood there in my nicest button-up, sipping ginger ale while driving, trying not to appear to be counting down the minutes. Later that night, I informed her that I felt out of place. She stared me dead in the eye and said, "That is precisely why I brought you. Because you aren't like them, and I appreciated it." I did, but it didn't always make things easier. It wasn't only her world adapting to mine. I too had to change. My employer realized I wasn't as focused. Began declining. Extra service calls, not because I was lazy, but because for the first time, being there seemed more essential than doing something. And for someone who has always assessed himself by his work, this was new territory. Angela picked up on it. One night, we were at my house. It's not fancy. It's small, crowded, and a little rough around the edges, but it's mine. She sat cross-legged on the couch, flipping through an old high school yearbook that I had no idea I still kept. "You've built a good life here," she replied sincerely. "It's not much," I said, "but yes, it is mine." She gazed around the room at the tools heaped by the entrance, the cracked countertop, and the lopsided artwork I got for $5 at a thrift store. "I like it," she replied, and I believed her. That night, we talked about everything, including where we were and where we expected to go, not in some fanciful, magical way, in a grounded, adult manner. She informed me she was considering leaving her corporate job. She said she was bored of chasing metrics and appearing to care about quarterly goals she didn't believe in. She had been wondering beginning something tiny, something with meaning. Perhaps something creative. I told her I was thinking of registering my own repair business, purchasing a van, getting my name on the side, not simply working for someone, but creating something uniquely mine. Then she glanced at me and said, "Something unexpected. What if we made something together?" I blinked. "Do you mean like us?" She nodded. "Yeah, like us." That happened 2 months ago. Since then, things have changed in all the right ways. She's been helping me lay the groundwork for something real. A little brand, a logo, and even a simple website. She even put out a marketing strategy that made sense to someone like me. I am still out here doing the work, climbing ladders, crawling beneath houses, and getting paint and dust in my boots. But now it doesn't feel like I'm simply mending things. It feels like I'm creating something that might last. We aren't rushing into anything. We still have our own places, our own mornings. We have our own terrible behaviors, but we intentionally choose each other every day. And honestly, what was the choice? That quiet, steady choice. It conveys more than any label ever could. Last weekend, we returned to the waterfall. Same site, same rocks. The sound of running water echoed through the trees. Only this time, we brought coffee and donuts. I had my arm over her, and she rested her head on my shoulder. We didn't say much, just sat and listened to the beat of the water and the silence in between. Then she said, "I never expected to fall for the guy who came to fix my lights." I laughed. I never imagined the woman who owned that house would invite me to stay. She looked up and grinned. "So you're no longer simply the electrician." I said nothing back. I just kissed her on the temple and brought her in closer, because she was correct. I am still Ryan, still 24. I'm still figuring it all out, one job, one bill at a time. But now I have someone beside me who not only observes what I do, but also sees me. And perhaps that's the true story here. Not a fairy tale between a wealthy girl and a working-class man. Not the Porsche, not the picnic, not even a kiss. However, two people from quite different backgrounds have decided to collaborate to create something new. There's no drama. There were no fireworks. Just being honest. Something messy, imperfect, real. And somehow, it's ours.